Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young. This is a weekly podcast where we explore the strengths we have because of our sensitivity and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hey there. To the creatives, healers, sensitives, and deep thinkers, how the heck are you? We are full on into summer. We're mid-August by the time you're hearing this. How's it going? Are you staying cool? Today's episode is with Kelly Vance. She was a guest on the podcast back on episode 84, and the title of that one was, I Didn't Know How to Use My Sensitivity. And Kelly reached out to me recently via email to just give me an update on what was going on. She had some major changes, and I really wanted to have her come back and talk about some of these changes, what she learned from taking the online HSP course, how it's changed her life, because it's been 3 years now since she took the course. So I think this is a really relatable episode. And she talks about everything's fine with her now. So I just want to let you know. But she lost a lot in the last 18 months, went through some major transitions, and she's coming through it and has made some beautiful connections and is really embracing who she is. I think it's a very empowering and enlightening episode. I don't think it's sad. She doesn't talk about specifically what she names a couple of the losses, but there's not tragedy and trauma in this episode. But she talks about learning to face her feelings and using distress tolerance and using mantras like we can do hard things, knowing that she has a right to be here and to take up space and that she needs to be the person that she needs the most. I just think it's an incredibly empowering and enlightening episode, and I hope you do too. Let me tell you a little bit about Kelly Vance. Kelly is an abstract artist, cat foster, animal shelter volunteer, and highly sensitive ambivert. She loves creative endeavors, irreverent shenanigans, enjoying delicious food with dear friends, and is always working on ways to balance sensation seeking with the need to rest. She lives in Scottsdale, Arizona with her husband. I think that's all I have to say. And now, on to the show. Hey, Kel, welcome.
Hey, Patricia.
So nice to have you back.
It's so nice to be back.
I know. So a lot has happened. You took the course back in June of 2020, so it's been over 3 years now. And you just reached out to me recently to just let me know, kind of give me an update. And we started talking about having you come back because you were on the podcast. I should have the episode, and maybe in the intro, I'll get my act together and say which one it was.
Okay.
But I would love to hear how you're doing. And even before we recorded, I asked how nervous or excited are you? And do you remember what you said to me?
Yes, I said that I was feeling really nervous last night, and I was thinking through what I wanted to say, what I didn't want to say. And then it hit me that one of the big lessons I got out of the course was that it is okay to show up however I am, whether that's 100%, 50%, 25%. And so I thought, well, that applies to today also. And then also I know you say in every episode that we might scrap it. So I have that escape hatch too.
That's Jen. That
Jen.
is not my motto.
Just the option's nice.
No, I think having that option, knowing that this doesn't have to be perfect, allows us to show up fully how we are. So I think that that really does work. And I think that's such a beautiful concept that you left with, that all we have to do is show up. Like that really simplifies things.
It's really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. So where do you want to start? We did talk about that you are still in touch with a couple of the people from your group. And that's been, again, almost 3 years now.
3 years. Yeah. Yeah. We generally chat at least once a week. Sometimes it's 2 if we're all really busy, but we still do the same things that we did in group, where we talk about what's going on, how we're handling it. And just like then, it was so helpful just to see how other HSPs are handling life and handling situations. And it's really nice to process together. And we often joke about all the texts we write each other in our heads that don't get sent because we talk to each other a lot in our heads. that don't make it to text, but it's just that having someone who knows what you're going through in a given moment is so invaluable.
Yeah. I have a sense about you because you and I have talked a little bit offline. We've exchanged a couple letters. You're artistic. My sense is you have a pretty eclectic group of friends. Is that accurate?
I would say the group is eclectic in the sense that there are a lot of artists, creatives, writers, those kind of folks, but they tend to be limited to kind of the artist, creative type of folks generally. Not everybody, but most.
So are the people from the HSP course, is there anything that's unique about that? Because in my mind, I'm thinking you probably have a bunch of people that are very supportive in your life and nurturing just because they're creatives.
I do. What's nice about them is that they are outside of the life that I have at home. So they don't spend time in the same social groups and they have a really distanced perspective to things. That's really helpful to hear. Sometimes with people that you spend a lot of time with, it's easy to take shortcuts and it's harder to do with them because I have to explain who this person is and who that person is and what situation happened. I really like having that distance because that helps give me distance.
So I'm just a little confused of which group do you have distance with and which group do you not?
I have distance with the two folks I'm still in contact with from the course.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that gives you, I'm sorry to ask you to reiterate, but if I can't anchor who you're talking about, the information gets lost in the wind. So can you reiterate with the people that you have stayed in touch with from the HSP course, how is that different than your artist friends?
They give me a different perspective on things that are going on because they don't know the people involved and they're not in it. Whereas many of my friends are friends with each other. So it's a community essentially, and they're outside of that. So it's nice to have a perspective that's just outside the social group that I live in.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So do you want to talk a little bit about some of the things that have happened since you took the course and how the things from the course have impacted how you're living your life?
Sure. It's a lot. And even since group, I mean, it's been 3 years, but it feels more like 10, both in terms of life and going through COVID and just, I don't know, things have been pretty messy. Things kind of fell apart last year in a pretty big way. Within, I don't know, half an hour, I lost a partner. I lost my home. I lost my pets. I lost my future. I lost pretty much everything that my life looked like with the exception of my husband. And so there was a lot of starting over and a lot of what now and a lot of, gosh, I have no idea what comes next. And that for a highly sensitive person who likes to plan and flowchart and always know what's coming around the corner was extremely difficult.
Yeah. And can we just jump forward where you're at now? You're in a solid, stable place. So even though things were hard, you're okay. Just want to cut to the chase and then we can go back in and fill in some of those pieces that happened in the middle that you're comfortable sharing.
Yes, I am doing okay. I'm healing really well. I think I'm honestly a lot further along in my healing process, my grief process than I expected. But I've also actively sought help and have done things to heal and really work on what happened and facing feelings and being uncomfortable and knowing I can do those things, partially that I learned in the course because you talked to us a lot about distress tolerance. And I have those two words in my head that I heard Patricia say 3 years ago, distress tolerance. And so I know, okay, I got this. I can do this. We can do hard things over and over again ad nauseum for 3 years.
But I think that there's such a value in, for me at least, adapting those mantras because when things do get hard to know, this is just a minute. This isn't the rest of my life. This will pass. I can get through this. This is uncomfortable. And so that does bring comfort when things are hard. And, you know, the last couple of weeks have been really expansive for me. Like, I feel like I've had a break from the last couple of months have been really hard and doing very intense work, being very present for uncomfortable feelings. And now I'm getting a little mini vacation from it and I'm appreciating it. This is not an end destination. I know that things will be challenging again, but it's also nice to enjoy it. I know people often feel afraid when they're feeling joyful or free that something terrible is going to happen. And that's not my perspective. We just have these waves that come. In the last couple months, I've been doing some really, really hard internal work with some very challenging external situations and walking through it. And then it's so nice to just get a little break for a little while, just to really not be anxious, and for the most part to be sleeping well and to be feeling social and outgoing. And like, just so nice when we get these little breaks.
It's really nice. I have had a similar experience recently where a lot of the hard things that I had planned for myself to do this year, I have done.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yay.
now things are kind of at a lull and I get to decide what comes next.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not forced to deal with crisis, trauma every day, figuring out, this, that, the other, having to calm myself through negative feelings, panic attacks, things like that, where I feel like I have a normal life, whatever that looks like for me, which I don't even know yet because it's not long enough. So yeah,
Right.
I appreciate that too. I'm enjoying having just space to be and not having to do and work constantly.
Kelly, before we started recording, you said that you had some notes that you'd taken. So I think what I'd like to do is have you share some of those. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what has been going on. But if we talked about before we recorded, kind of connecting those things so listeners get like, if I take this course, how's it going to help me?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, can you share a little bit of your notes with us?
Sure. You invited the group to be themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
you did that at the beginning with the taking a breath and closing our eyes and challenging us to come back a little bit later and not be worried if we were first or last or any of that. And being invited to be myself and take the time that I needed was really powerful. And it's something that I took away from there going, I think I need to put this in all aspects of my life because I'm allowed to have the space that extends beyond the 5 minutes at the beginning of the group. So that has allowed me to do the healing that I need to do the grieving that I need to do, and to show up to life really messy, really imperfect, really not present a lot of the time, and have that be okay and know that it was okay. And it took a ton of practice, and I worried because I like to be the friend that's on and that's funny and engaging. And there really hasn't been a lot of that in the last 18 months or so. So to know that I could sit with my friend and cry and they would hold my hand and that wasn't okay. And I wouldn't be ticking in my brain thinking that they're bored or that they want to go or that they're uncomfortable, letting them be responsible for, hey, I'm uncomfortable, to let me know and not me having to do both of our work. It has just been one of the most beautiful and healing experiences that I didn't know that I needed.
Yeah, that is beautiful. How was the connection that you felt with whoever you were allowing to be there for you in this really messy, unknown, uncertain place?
It was amazing and intense and beautiful and so present. There was a lack of codependency there because I didn't expect them to fix it. They didn't try to fix it. It was merely sitting with me in my pain. And that, I don't even know if I can articulate how powerful that is. And then that showed me, I want to show up for my friends that way, where I don't try to fix, because I'm a problem solver. Just, it's my natural go-to. But there are some problems you cannot solve. You just have to sit and be with. And so they sat and were with me in my discomfort and my sadness.
Yeah. In the past, is that something you would have done? Would you have allowed people to be present for you in a messy space?
Not in that way. No. There was a vulnerability that I had starting learning with taking a course that, no, it's okay for me to be vulnerable. And then also thinking, do I like it when people are vulnerable with me? Well, yeah, because that's the most real that they're going to get with me. And I was in such a place of not feeling like there was any more I could lose. So that made it easier to take chances and to say, hey, I got nothing. Please come sit on the floor with me. Because that's how some days were.
Yeah. There's a word for it and I can't think of what the word is. Being pedantic, this bothers me. But there's an irony in surrendering the relationship that then you end up getting all of these great things in that space of not being curated and scripted and trying to show up in the way that you think that you should be really often prevents intimacy. We're so afraid of losing people and pushing people away. And when we surrender and allow ourselves to show up with safe people, please hear me, with safe people, that there is such an intimacy that can happen and such a closeness in that pain. There's an irony of being in so much pain and having somebody just be present with you that it's such a strong contrast. I'm not even sure that I have words to describe it.
Yes, that is definitely something that I have experienced. I don't have any new people in my life who are close to me. Everyone who is close to me are people that I was already friends with, but the relationships are so much deeper now. There's so much more to them. There is so much more love. I don't even know how to describe it. There's an intensity to it that I didn't have before. And that's because I have just been very honest and naked with them, and they have been honest and naked with me. And every time there's an interaction, I have the genuine feeling like we're both showing up as we are, and that there's no attempt to mask. There's no attempt to be different. It is what it is. And I love that kind of interaction with people. I find it so joyous and rewarding.
What do you think the shift was? If these are people that you have already known, what do you think the shift was in you? Was it in you or was it in the other person to show up differently to create this intimacy?
I think it was the fact that I was grieving so hard and that I just didn't feel like there was anything left to lose. I felt like I've lost most of what my life was. And so, you get to a point where it's difficult to care. I couldn't care about how entertaining or not entertaining I was on a given moment. It was just, this is the mess that I am on the floor. Please come sit with me and let's color together. And that's what happened. So it was me. It was me letting more of my walls down, being more open, being more honest, being willing to cry, being willing to not look very good, being willing to make desperate phone calls at times and need someone to talk to. It was me being willing to reach out in a way that I had not done before or never felt safe enough to do before.
Have you noticed your friends showing up differently as you allowed yourself to be vulnerable and have people be there for you? Have you noticed that other people are allowing you to see more parts of them?
Yes. I think creating that environment of safety really lets people show up how they need to. And I have friends who will regularly cancel plans because they say, I'm out of spoons. I don't have the spoons. I need to hide today. I need to whatever today. And I've done that too. I've said, I don't have it in me to get together. Let's do another day. I love that we're all able to be honest about that because the first thing I think when someone cancels with me is I love that they're taking care of themselves and that they feel comfortable enough with me to be honest about that and not show up anyway or show up and feel resentful that they kept the plan when they really should have stayed home.
Yeah. And I know that for people that have chronic illness, and this is true if you're HSP, if you're autistic, if you're neurodivergent, that sometimes we just get tired and can't. And I've talked to people who don't want to make plans because they feel like they can't be reliable and they don't want people to be disappointed. And I always encourage people to just communicate about, is this a solid plan? Is this a tentative plan? I often talk about I need a back door out. So I think I'm good, but I want to be able to determine last minute if it's not going to work for me. And I think that when we find people and we trust that we can communicate, then we're able to have plans where if you and I have a plan, it's like I have something going on that morning. I think I'll be good, but I'm not sure if I, need to cancel. Are you going to be okay with that? And that ends up being a really great way that people can be much more authentic and have connections and trust that people aren't going to get mad. But I think there's a difference of if I don't communicate that with you and then I consistently cancel, but I'm not communicating why or that may happen, then of course you're going to think, well, I don't want to make plans with Patricia because she's always canceling. But I think when we communicate and negotiate, there's a lot more room for what we think that there isn't room for.
Yes. we also know what's going on for that person. And if you tell me what's going on, then my brain isn't going to invent scenarios about why you just canceled with me, and I can move on with my day or vice versa.
Right. I just think there's so much freedom. It's funny. I have someone that I'm close to, and we are wired very differently. And when we talk about things, if you thought about saying that, nope. And just today we were talking and they said like, and I am not going to be talking about my feelings. And I'm like, I don't think I said anything about you talking about your feelings. They were talking about doing a trip and their concerns about the trip. And in the same breath, I'm planning my first paddling and kayaking trip with somebody that I paddle with. And we paddled on Friday and talked about like, what are our fears and concerns? Like it's going to ruin the friendship. And are we going to eat at the same times? And for me, I am not aware of when I get hungry. And when I recognize I'm hungry, I have like 10 minutes to eat or I get really cranky. And that can be problematic. And it's great because she keeps snacks in her car all the time because she's got low blood sugar and she totally relates to it. And we talked about like, what times do you like to eat? And all of these different things of when we get to know people and what our fears are. And if we put this stuff out on the table, then we can navigate it. And part of what we talked about is what Jen talks about is let's assume that we're going to miscommunicate. Let's assume we're going to have rupture and know that repair is part of it and that we honor the relationship and we'll be able to work through what we work through and talking about our tendency to people please. And I think that when we have these conversations, we can have so much more richness. And there is fear because it is new. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
I think that's such a great way to go about it, is to talk about the things ahead of time and make sure you establish, I'm going to need downtime. You know, if I disappear for a few hours, I'll let you know, but it's not about you. It's me taking care of my nervous system.
Yeah. Yeah. We decided we're both going to have our own tents, even though we're on the same campground, so that we both have our own, a little bit of away time and privacy and space. And I don't know, it just feels kind of exciting.
That's the way to do it. I am traveling with friends next week that I haven't traveled with either. And we all have our own bedrooms. And that was I was insisting, I need my own bedroom. I need to be able to go in a room and shut a door and know that that space is mine. And if I have it, I usually don't need it. It's just having it makes me feel safe enough that this is here if I need it.
Yep. That and earplugs. Like I can't go anywhere without earplugs.
Earplugs, eye mask, any way to escape. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit more about what has happened in this time since you took the course and some of the changes that you've made and how you've grown?
Yeah. When things went pretty bad for me early last year, I had been in the process of really revamping my internal language. And that was something else that came up for me during your course as I realized how abusive I was to myself and the kind of abusive language, and that I would never, ever speak to anyone in my life that way. I spoke to myself that way multiple times a day. And so when my life kind of exploded, I needed to really show up for myself in a way that I hadn't before. And I think because I was so low in one area, another area overcompensated. And I had this incredibly loving, validating, supportive person in my head that was telling me what I'm feeling is okay. This is all okay. It's temporary. Just basically nonstop affirmations of things that I needed to hear. And reminding myself that whatever this process looks like, however long it takes, whether anyone understands it or not, doesn't matter. My process is okay. No feelings are wrong or bad. And I think that really gave me the grace and space to get through this in the way that I have.
That's beautiful. That's so empowering.
It really was. And I find that the only area in my life where I still have some of the negative language is with my heart. I get critical really easily. And so that's the last frontier of my negative internal language.
Yeah. I love that gentle, calm, reassuring, soothing voice. I think it's so easy for us to have so much negative stuff on board. I think the first thing is to be neutral with it in some ways. And sometimes we just need to stop it altogether.
I think when life exploded, I think that's when I was really able to make the shift from negative to positive. And I recognized that I needed to be the person that I needed the most, whatever that looked like. And I was. And I've continued to be that person because no one else is going to know what I need. No one else is going to understand how I feel. No one else is going to be in my shoes. And so I am the best suited person to address the needs that I'm having. And that was also extremely empowering.
That's very empowering. This is where Jen would talk about existential loneliness and we're born alone and we die alone. And I roll my eyes.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about is true, that really we're the only person that can be here for us. And when we take responsibility for that, there's a real freedom. And if it upsets you as much as it upsets me when Jen says it and you're listening to this and don't listen and go, nah, I rebuke you or whatever works, that if you're not in a place to hear that right now, that's really okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's exciting. What else?
I think allowing myself to show up however I am has really allowed me to do that in my relationships. And I think that's enabled me to just take a step back always. And that's made it so much easier to not make stuff about me. Whereas before I would take stuff so personally and I had no idea how to not take things personally. I just never understood what that even meant. But once you can step back and realize you see a small sliver of what is going on for somebody, it's a lot easier to not make it about you. It doesn't mean I don't always have feelings. And sometimes my brain kind of wants to make it about me, but it's usually not. And that's an easier place for me to live these days rather than, why did they do this? Why didn't they show up like I do? Because they're not me. They're never going to show up like me. I have to let go of that expectation. And that's been another evolution of this process, has been learning how to let go of the expectation that anyone on the planet will ever react in the same way that I do. So I have to be very clear about what I want. I have to ask for what I want because I won't get it otherwise.
Are you in a place now, like we never want yucky things to happen, but do you have enough distance now? And if you don't, please feel free to be honest that, having all these things break down and the grief and the loss, do you feel like it's changed who you are? I don't know how to say this, but like, is there a benefit to what happened or do you have enough distance yet to feel that?
Yes, because when bad things happen, I immediately go back to, it's not that. So I can handle all kinds of things like I didn't count on having to have 2 total knee replacements in a year. Still would rather not have done that, but it needed to happen. And I knew, okay, it's going to be a bummer. It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of pain, but it's not me losing my life. It's not me losing love. It's not me losing pets. I'm not losing my house. I'm not losing my future. This is all a temporary stopgap right now. And this is going to end. And every time something, bums me out or upsets me, I go back to that because nothing is ever going to be that again. So yeah, it definitely raised or lowered the bar, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, I know sometimes in the midst of terrible things happening and falling apart, it often creates space for other things to come together that you wouldn't imagine. And to tell somebody that in the midst of things falling apart is not very helpful. But I know some things in my life that felt devastating really put me on an entirely new trajectory after I'd moved through it. And I'm so grateful that it happened. But in the moment, it sure didn't feel like there was anything good that was going to come from it.
Yes. I don't know that I can say yet that I'm grateful that it happened, but I can say that it opened the doors to a lot of really wonderful things that have happened. And I have never felt more satisfied. I've never felt more loved. I've never felt more in touch with who I am and what I want and where I want to go than I do right now. And I don't know where that is even, but I finally know how to ask myself. And more importantly, I know how to listen. Yeah. And that is also something that came from the course.
Oh, that's beautiful. I don't know about you, but what I find sometimes too is that when friendships or relationships don't work out, it helps me to clarify what some of my basic need statements are in relationships so I can articulate that in the next relationship. That, these are things that are really important for me to have. And these are really important ways that the people that I allow very close to me, I'm not talking about casual relationships because people have the freedom to be whoever they are, but the people that I really let into my inner circle, I'm starting to see that there are some basic things that are really important for me to have.
Same. I've really been able to narrow down what I need out of a relationship, and it's a lot less than I thought, because I recognize that their behavior isn't about me. I recognize that I can meet my own needs. I recognize that I can ask for what I want. And I also can recognize that if I'm not getting what I want, I can discontinue the relationship. I can put boundaries in. There's a lot of wiggle room as far as what I do with it. It doesn't need to be a binary situation. And I think I previously used to feel that it was.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there any specifics in relationships that you know that you need that you're comfortable sharing?
I need someone to be honest with me. I need someone to let me know what's going on. I need them to be responsible for their own feelings and responsible for communicating that with me. And I also need respect. And if I'm not getting that, then it's going to be difficult for me to keep engaging.
Yeah. I find some of the things that are really helpful is doing frequent check-ins. You know, how are you doing? What are you needing? Do we need to make any adjustments? Having somebody that can join me in my experience when I'm struggling, and just I need someone to kind of enter my world when I'm having a hard time. And then after that, if I need a perspective or if I need information or advice, then I can have that. But when I'm really struggling, I just need someone to kind of be with me and not have their agenda. And then communication. If you need a break, if you need to leave, can you just communicate that instead of just disappearing?
Yes. I am reminded of Brene Brown's quote of clarity is kind. And that is something that I try to remember a lot, that people don't usually care what you need to do to take care of yourself. They just need to know what's going on. And most people are fine giving you space, giving you a break, giving you time, whatever you need. You just need to make that known. And I think that's what a lot of us struggle to do.
Yeah. And for me, how much I appreciate when people are very clear about their boundaries. And I went to visit Jen spontaneously and wanted to extend my stay, but I really had a fear of like, have you had enough of me? Do you want me to leave? Like, I would count on her to tell me. And I was talking with another friend who was struggling with some things in their relationship and didn't want to be unkind. And I was thinking about when I asked Jen, like, I want to trust that I can ask for what I want, but she's not going to be like, I don't really want her to be here another day, but I don't want to say anything. I would much rather have her say, I've loved spending time with you and this has been enough. I would much rather have that, because for the sustainability of the relationship, I know that I can show up and ask for what I want and trust that she's going to let me know what works and what doesn't work. And I encouraged my friend in this other relationship to really set clear limits and boundaries, even when we're afraid of hurting people's feelings, because in the long run, it ends up not working when it's like, well, maybe it's not a big deal. And maybe I want people to be clear, and I want to be able to be clear with people.
Yeah, I agree. I have a friend who, probably my closest friend, and we both sometimes just get in our own heads about things. And then we start feeling like the other is upset or that we're not okay. And so one of us will check in, and we've done this pretty much the entire time we've been close. And I love knowing that if I ask her that, it's not going to freak her out. And I'm pretty sure she knows that asking me is not going to freak me out. And we are both quick to reassure each other nothing's going on.
Right. Is there anything else about the course that would be helpful for you to share with the listeners?
I think really the core of it is accepting the sensitivity and not trying to chase it away, not trying to make it different, not trying to shame it, that it starts with acceptance, and then you can eventually start to love and take care of it. I think doing that and normalizing the experiences that I had, which is a lot of what the course did, it put a lot of me into context, and I'm a context person. I really can't function without context, but if you give me context, I can do just about anything. So understanding how my brain works, why it works the way it does, along with wounding from childhood and things that happened to me, really helped me be okay with thoughts and feelings I'm having that I don't want to have. don't worry about not having feelings, or rather, I don't worry about not liking my feelings. I know that my feelings are okay and that there's nothing wrong with them. And I spent much of my life not wanting to feel whatever it was I was feeling. And that was incredibly liberating to get to that point.
Yeah, it can be exhausting to not try and feel. Someone close to me is struggling with something right now, like really struggling. And their perception is things are hard and why would I want to talk about it? And I'm like, because they're hard. You want to talk about it.
Right. How do
you
you
want to
not
name
talk
what's
about
going
it?
on? Yeah.
Yeah. How do you not do that? I don't want to live a life where I don't do that. I'm glad I don't have to.
Yeah. And if it's going on and it's present, I have another friend right now who has some health things going on and it feels like it's what I would do. Like, well, I'm having a little aches and pains. It's a little hard right now. And I just said, like, I'm here for all of it. If you want to talk about how much pain you're in and how hard it is, and you don't have to make it nice. And I'm here to hear it every single day if you need to. And I think that people tell us we're negative or we're complaining. And when we feel things deeply and we're aware of what's going on in our bodies, that's what's up for us. And when we allow it and talk about it, that allows us to move on to the next thing. And that whole of thinking that it's not okay to talk about things that are difficult or hard or painful, I'm here for it all. Whatever it is, I'm here for it.
That is so important. Last summer, I was texting with a friend, and you feel tired of talking about the same thing all the time. And I've been in the same grief place for a long time. And it gets old. It gets old and it gets boring to me. And I'm the person that's having the feelings. And I communicated that to a friend, and she texted back and said, I love you and I love your grief. And that probably a year ago, she sent me that text. And I haven't forgotten it, because that was just such a warm, welcoming thing to you accept all of me, even with my sadness and grief that you've got to be tired of hearing about at this point.
Yeah.
It's so loving and wonderful.
Yeah. There's just room for you to be you wherever you're at.
Exactly. Yes. Room to be wherever I am.
Which is where we have more connection, because I think what we historically do is we pull back until we can pull ourselves together, and then we pretend that everything's okay. But we have these periods where we withdraw because we feel like we can't show up authentically. And to have that connection when we're struggling, it's so beautiful and powerful.
That is why I have really seen a shift in my relationships, is that I see everybody's made room for my grief. Everybody's made room for me to be sad. People have reached out more often, invited me to do things more often. And I have promised myself I would say yes, unless I have a compelling reason not to. And that is so great, because I haven't really been fun at parties for a while. But I'm still getting invited. I still go. I still show up, even if it's for a couple hours and then I'm ready to go. It's still I'm doing what I can do, and that's okay.
Yeah. Do you remember, did you have any resistance to taking the course, or any thoughts about like, why is this going to work? Or I have that when I think about joining groups. I have a lot of resistance because I've had so many times when it's been a bad fit and I feel like I'm the weirdo and I don't feel honored. So did you have any of that before taking the course?
I actually didn't. I was in such a desperate emotional place that I was counting down the days until it started, because I was not functioning well at home, being in quarantine and the world seeming so uncertain and scary, that I just couldn't find any place of peace in my own brain or my own body, that I thought that there's some key stuff I'm missing here. I can't wait to dig in and figure out how to drive this car, because it's just sitting on the side of the road right now.
Yeah. If anybody's thinking about taking the course, but they're like, I don't know, well, you stayed in touch with those people. I never know who's going to be in a group, so I can't ever guarantee that. But if someone's feeling like, I don't know about this, do you have anything you would say to them?
I would say take the chance, because you never know who you're going to meet, and you never know what you're going to learn. And there were a set of principles that I took away from it that have just multiplied in recent times. So like I told you in the email, it was really foundational for a lot of other stuff, things that I've been working on for years and haven't really made any headway with. And then suddenly I have these pieces, and things made a lot more sense. It was a lot easier to work through some of the stuff that I was trying to work through. Really anything at all anymore that comes up for me, I know how to work through it. I know how to figure out what's going on. I know how to verbalize it. I know how to attack it. I know how to work through it. And I also know if I'm just going to be in it right now, that's okay too. I don't need to jump into action. So all of that were things that you did, you demonstrated, you invited us to do in the course. I think if anyone believes they are HSP at all and have not just had this amazing life experience as a highly sensitive person, you don't really have anything to lose.
Is there anything else before we wrap up?
I want to let other highly sensitive people know that they matter, they are important, and the world needs us.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thanks for reaching out, sending me a letter again.
You're welcome.
You're the person that called me, said I had mad lady balls.
Yes, I am.
And I love that. And then when I thought, our language is so sexist and so then we said mad lady ovaries, but it just does not have the same punch.
It doesn't.
I know. That kind of makes me mad.
Right?
Kind of makes me mad.
The patriarchy.
I know. Well, thanks so much for coming back, Kellen, letting me know what's going on. And I'm so glad to hear that you're managing and the tools that you have will get you through anything. Life's going to throw stuff at us and it's about having tools to navigate. And it sounds like you're really doing a beautiful job.
Thank you. It was great to be here. And the course for me was life-changing. And I will sing that from the rooftops because it's just really enabled me to do a lot of really positive things for myself. So I appreciate it. And I appreciate you.
Thanks, Kel. Thanks for being here today. And I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Hey again. So I'm curious to know what you thought. Was that helpful? I just love the things that Kelly talked about and how empowered she is. Let me tell you a little bit about the next online HSP course. It will be starting Monday, September 11th, and it's going to go through either October 13th or October 20th. I may need to take a week off in there. I'm going to limit this to up to 8 members, so it's going to be a small group. Registration is starting August 16th, and there'll be early bird registration from August 16th to August 22nd of 2023. There'll still be registration, but the price is going to go up a little bit from August 23rd to August 30th, 2023. Let me tell you a little bit about the course. Jen and I created this course together, I think almost 4 years ago. We meet for 10 weeks. There's a video, at least one video for every week on the topic that Jen and I recorded. There are questions to reflect on if you want to. Sometimes there are links for additional things. Everything in the course is optional. I do not check it the new week to see if you've done your homework. You get to do what feels right for you. And we generally open up each group for people to talk about whatever's going on in their lives because it ends up relating to what the topics are. And especially the first couple of weeks that I take notes when people talk, and then I'll say who else has felt like, they haven't been listened to? Raise of hands. Who else feels like they're too much? Raise of hands. Who else feels like it's hard when there's conflict and you don't know what to say? Raise of hands. There's so much normalizing. And I think things that we experience, and if we haven't talked to a lot of other people, or maybe we've talked to our therapist, we just think that our therapist is the one that's telling us that we're okay. And when we are in a group of people that are wired similarly, there's a lot of variation, but we still have those similarities. It just can be so incredibly validating. So let me tell you about what the topics are and tell you a little bit more about what you can expect. We cover mindfulness and self-compassion, turning negative messages into strengths, perfectionism, embracing our emotions, self-care is non-negotiable, boundaries, communication, authenticity, and vulnerability, and creating a lifestyle that honors the highly sensitive person. And Jen and I talk about each of these things in the weekly videos. I think it's incredibly empowering to be in a group with other people. I'm very mindful and protective of how the sharing goes, meaning we don't do crosstalk. There's no advice giving unless you're asking for feedback. Everybody gets a chance to share. It's just a very empowering experience. I just finished a group a couple weeks ago, and actually 2 people in this group had taken the course before because they just felt like they wanted more support and they wanted more community. It's just a beautiful opportunity. If you're interested in taking the course, you can go to my website at unapologeticallysensitive.com. There's a tab for the HSP groups. If you want more information, there are 1-minute audio clips. There's a video. There are podcast episodes. There's a listing of what we cover each week. If you're like me, you want lots of information. And then that fear of, am I going to fit in? Am I going to be seen? Is it going to be worthwhile? I've taken lots of groups before. I'm never really sure that I'm going to like it. I just think it's a great experience. If you're interested in working with me, I have a couple spots open. Again, you can go to unapologeticallysensitive.com. If you've taken the course in the past and you're wondering, how come Patricia's never reached out to me? Because it's just hard sometimes and I get caught up in things. Oftentimes, how people get on the podcast is they often send me emails, they check in with me, they let me know what's going on. And then I go, oh, do you want to be on the podcast? So if you have taken the course in the past and you want to share your experience, shoot me an email, tell me what's going on, and we can set something up to record before the next course starts, probably in February. I think that's all I have to say. I hope you're doing well. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. You have a right to be here. You have a right to take up space. It's okay for people to wait for you. People don't have to like you. People don't have to understand you. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to be joyful. It's okay to be successful. It's okay to be happy. It's okay to speak your mind. It's okay that people think that you're not polite and that you're rude because you're setting boundaries and you're not playing the nice game anymore. Any and all parts of you are okay and welcome. The world needs you. Have a blessed day.